wanted to make a quick video walking you through the rhetorical analysis that I wrote after this week's discussion on the Emmeline Pankhurst piece. I thought you folks did a really, really nice job navigating this, and really for kind of avoiding the trap that I think a lot of students would fall into with this, which is when they saw the idea of our speaker being a suffragist, their mind immediately going to this idea of, okay, I know what this speech is already going to be. It's going to be about women have the right to vote and needing the right to vote. But you did a great job of recognizing that that's an undercurrent in the speech, but that's actually not the focus of it. The focus of it, far more than anything else, was the idea of justifying the actions, the more militant actions that she was being accused of. So justifying that or validating it was a word that Grace Cook used in our conversation on Friday that I thought was absolutely fantastic. That idea of validating her tactics, that was really kind of the primary purpose. And then within that, of course, is saying the idea of militant actions are necessary because we don't have the right to vote. So that's certainly still a piece of it, but it's not the entirety of it. I thought you did a really, really nice job of navigating that. So here's what I want to do in this. I certainly want to walk through it. I also want to do a little bit of highlighting because a few people have asked about kind of some go-to structures. As you know, structures kind of have some pros and cons. I think they're great to fall back on in a timed writing. Although certainly, when we have more time to write an essay, we need to try and break away from those. But at the end of the day, when you've got 40 minutes on the clock to read and craft a piece, sometimes it is nice to have some things to fall back on. So I will kind of show you maybe some of those strategies that we've talked about in class and how that might apply to this particular essay. The other quick reminder I want to give you before we break this down is the idea of making sure that you really truly have read and understood this piece. Kind of alluding to that idea that some people might misinterpret what the purpose of this would be and think it's just another suffragist piece. And I don't mean that in a demeaning way, but just the idea of like making that quick leap instead of reading carefully and recognizing that deeper purpose. Remember that the rhetorical analysis is a reading exam and a writing exam. So if you didn't communicate that you're a good, careful reader, it doesn't matter how beautiful the writing is. If you didn't carefully read and pick up on that purpose, you're going to be behind. It's going to be really hard to get one of those top half essays. So give yourself time to read, give yourself time to think, give yourself time to kind of converse with yourself. Obviously, you won't have a chance to do kind of the group discussions we've been doing, but give yourself time to think and plan and read and reread and revisit the intro material. It's going to pay off in the long run. So let's take a quick look here. Again, you should have already read through my essay. That way we can move through it pretty quickly. If you haven't, please hit the pause button, give it a read, and then come back together with us. All right. So as we've been talking about, one way that I like to open up my essays for rhetorical analysis is that upside-down triangle model. We haven't really talked about it in those terms for rhetorical analysis. We've more thought about what's an AP Lang style question that maybe we could open up with, or that we could write from to kind of gain a core idea to open up with. But really, that's that upside-down triangle model that we've really been talking about. So I actually want to kind of put that right next to, there we go, put that right next to that paragraph here. All right. So as we take a look, this idea of opening broad, having a lead-in, and then getting literally and symbolically to the point. What was the point of this piece? So as we take a look here, I thought we asked some really, really good questions. Everything from what's the value of disobedience to some of your extent questions. To what extent can violence or more aggressive means be necessary or appropriate? I liked some of those questions, and so I decided I wanted to actually open up with a couple questions here, which normally I'm not a big fan of opening with questions, but what I really tried to do here with these two questions, you'll notice that these are not, I'm not using the pronoun you. I think that's maybe the biggest trap that gets on people's nerves, and mine admittedly, is have you ever... Avoid those, bury those. But you'll notice that these questions are more AP Lang style. There are far more theoretical questions, maybe even philosophical questions would be a good way to phrase it. What is the value in disobedience, or at least in acts labeled disobedient by those in power? I think that that's a really powerful opening because, I'm playing with the idea of disobedience. I'm establishing that power is going to play a role in this. It certainly does for her. And so that's how I decided to open this. You'll notice that as I give this a quick highlight, this green, this broad idea right here, doesn't say anything about Emmeline Pankhurst. It's kind of what's at the core of this. So I started broad. I transitioned or led in this section right here, which I'm going to highlight in kind of a yellow or orangish color here. So this is where I established my speaker. I felt like I could have maybe done a better job with the audience, but really, to me, the audience she was most aware of was the people who were seeing her as militant, more than the fact that she was in America. Certainly that played a little bit of a role when she talked about the Boston Tea Party. But for me, I feel like, one, I could have probably done a better job of that, but two, that idea of thinking about that there are people who are labeling her as militant was kind of what I wanted to chase after. And so then my claim, what's literally and symbolically the point of this particular essay, right here, that in the face of critiques from those who labeled her and her cause as too militant, Pankhurst validates, so here's what she was doing, and why. Pankhurst validates her tactics as necessary. Why? In order to bring about change. So what she does is validate her tactics, why she does it, in order to bring about change. All right, so that's kind of that upside down triangle model there. As we look at the body paragraphs, these didn't all look the same, but I will kind of highlight a little bit here. I want to highlight the first body paragraph and the third body paragraph. The first one is kind of when you have one particular moment you want to hang on to, so you're not necessarily doing some linking. Now, this idea of kind of her diction and the tone that she uses is very wartime. I think you could link to other sections. I just chose not to. In truth, if I had more time, I probably would have, but I found myself wanting to go back to add stuff, and I just simply ran out of time. So, as we take a look at that idea of kind of doing some highlighting and thinking about maybe a tier structure of topic, introduce the evidence, and reasoning, using one tier here I think really works. This idea of, from the opening of her speech, Pankhurst makes her purpose clear. I'm going to go ahead and kind of consider that my topic sentence here. Introducing would probably be kind of this, that she describes herself as a soldier who is here. And then this is obviously what I took directly from the text. So I'll put that one in pink here. You'll notice what that does, though, is that leaves the remainder of this really for kind of my reasoning of like why this was powerful. So this is my why. The pink was the what, this became the why. And that light blue section should connect to this light blue section up here, right? This idea of her validating her tactics as necessary to bring about change, that should be, this section down here should be complementary to that claim. And so I talked a little bit about she sees herself at war with the male establishment. I think that plays into those who are critiquing her, certainly. She's not in a position of power, plays in. She refuses to see herself or depict herself as powerless. Rather, she makes clear both to those who support her and those who criticize her that this is an issue she is willing to treat like a battlefield. So I thought that opening tone was really, really interesting. And to really kind of establish that that's at the opening, I think is important because that's a tone that really follows its way throughout. Looking back, maybe I could have made that point a little bit even more powerful, that that's a thread that ran its way throughout. But in truth, I think that that came through for the most part here. As we take a look here, I moved on a little bit to some of those situations that she was kind of tossing at her audience, some of which were hypothetical. I thought that was a really cool moment that many of us broke down. This idea of, hey, men, when you want to make something happen, you go and vote. You vote these people out. But if you couldn't vote, what might you do? And so she kind of throws those hypotheticals in there. And I thought that was really interesting. This idea of that if you didn't have the right to vote, they would either become submissive or they would rise up to get their grievances remedied. As we look at that evidence, you'll notice once again that the reasoning is really kind of what becomes heavy down here. And I won't highlight the entire paragraph here, but just once again to see that it's my voice more than anything else that's carrying this piece, that after the evidence that got established, I'm ending with that reasoning, which once again should come back and connect up to that claim. The paragraph I want to highlight in full, though, is this one, because I think this is maybe my best example of kind of pulling a few different examples. Now, in truth, I kind of doubled up on that same section, but because I wanted to show kind of multiple moments that were happening, I still put them together here. So I think I still avoided the summary and still focused on that reasoning. So if we were to highlight this paragraph, I'm going to focus on how she embraces militant and also concedes that violence is not ideal, but it is necessary. So that's really going to be my focus here. So taking on this first part, I capture this idea. This is kind of my lead-in, and then of course I use my actually, I guess I could almost kind of consider all of this a bit of yellow and pink blended together, since I didn't take a direct quote here. But you'll notice once again what follows. All of this section ends up being that reasoning, that commentary on how it is that really complements her core message of why it is she's making the moves that she's making, why she's being more aggressive. And so part of that is this idea of that word militant, right? And so I didn't have a direct quote here, but I had a section to refer back to. She argues that without power, we must make more noise, more intrusive, fill the papers more than anyone else. So you could either put quotation marks around there, or if you're kind of doing an overview, just those line numbers. As I look back, I guess technically all of that should probably be pink, as that's kind of my indirect citation there. But my core here, again, the reasoning there in blue. And with that comes consequences. So I found a way to kind of link these together a little bit. So I transitioned, but I'm kind of taking this and pulling that thread into here. Short little setup of she concedes. I once again have my evidence, but most importantly, I'm focused on my reasoning. Why is it that these moments are powerful? How do they push her reasoning forward that this is the right tactic for her, considering that they don't have the power to vote? And so once again, it's not that voting is not at the core of this speech. I think it's an important element, but the focus is on why her tactics are right, considering she doesn't have the right to vote. She doesn't have that opportunity, and therefore, this is the right move for her until they gain that right. I really want to drive that home here at the end. This actually turned out to be one of my longer conclusions, even though it's only 4 sentences. A couple of my other ones I was running so short on time, they just ended up being, I think, 2 sentences, maybe 3. This one I gave a little bit more to, but ultimately, I wanted to kind of capture that dynamic to communicate to my reader, hey, I read this carefully. I didn't just say, ooh, suffragist, I know what this is, that I paid attention to this particular speech and the choices this particular speaker made. I wanted to really reemphasize that here. So she doesn't do this, rather she does do that, which is actually kind of an interesting thing. I didn't really mean to do it, but that idea of like, she doesn't do this, she does mean to do this. That's actually how she opened up this piece. I am not here to advocate for this. I am here as a soldier. So that's kind of an interesting thing. I truly didn't mean to do that intentionally as a commentary on hers, but that does kind of comment on an interesting strategy, a writing strategy of they didn't set out to do this, rather they did this instead, and once again, here's why. And I think kind of ending with that why is what I aim to do here. So check out your own essays, do a little comparing and contrasting. And remember, too, that I highlighted kind of like 3 important moments to highlight for these paragraphs. But there were actually some really kind of cool things that you brought up, and even that I had taken some notes on that I didn't include in this. I didn't have time. Remember, there is no one way to write a rhetorical analysis. There will always be more than 3 moments that you can focus on, whether those are linking moments or moments that you want to hold up. You are going to have a wide array of opportunities. So don't feel like you have to include everything. Just make sure that you have commented on moments at the beginning, in the middle, and the end to capture the entirety of the speech or the letter or whatever that may be. And as long as that comes through in your own essay, you have a really good shot at being a top half essay writer, as long as you've got that purpose correct. All right. So thank you again for all of your hard work. I really appreciate it. You've been doing a really, really nice job on this. I know that this has been a really unique way that we've been working on these writings, so I've been really excited with the work that you've been doing. So I appreciate it. Keep it up. And I'm excited to go ahead and kind of use some of these lessons for a really different but interesting text for next week. Looking forward to diving into that with you. So take care of yourselves, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.